louder, more energetic salawat. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد والثناء لله رب العالمين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل ولعنة الله على أعدائهم ومنكر فضائلهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. ثم أما بعد، فقد قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولقد كتبنا في الزبور من بعد الذكر أن الأرض يرثها عبادي الصالحون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Continuing our discussion on the advent of the 12th Imam and the condition of humanity before the reappearance of the Imam and after, we mentioned in our first session that the most emphasized topic in the world of hadith is the concept of the Mahdi and the end of times. We have 6,207 ahadith relating to this important topic. Alaykum as-salam wa rahmatullah. We also mentioned that the topic of the Mahdi is the topic of a savior, and the descriptions of the end of times is not only something that is discussed in the Islamic tradition. All major religions have addressed the topic of the end of times and the future of humanity. Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, you find passages in all of these scriptures that give us detailed accounts about the end of times. We also spoke about the phrase Akhir zaman in hadith literature. And we mentioned that Akhir zaman has two usages in hadith literature. Sometimes Akhir zaman refers to a very extended time period where we're referring to the advent of Islam until the day of Qiyamah, the bi'th of the Prophet until the day of Qiyamah. And the Holy Prophet is also referred to in many ahadith as Nabiyyu Akhir zaman, the Prophet of the end of times. And we have other ahadith where the end of times refer to a more specific time period, namely the end of Al-Ghaybatul Kubra until the Dhuhur of the Imam and the Day of Judgment. When you look at the ahadith, some of the descriptions of the end of times address the intellectual state of humanity at the end of times. You know, brothers and sisters, in the Islamic tradition, there is great emphasis on intellectual development. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, throughout the Holy Quran, admonishes communities for following their ancestors blindly. One of the criticisms that is directed towards the Meccans is that you people are blindly following in the footsteps of your predecessors. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is inviting the human being to make use of his intellectual faculties. When you look at the ahadith that speak about the end of times, you find that people will not pay attention and not give weight to some of the most fundamental questions that we encounter. People will be greatly confused with respect to the three most fundamental questions that we need to ask as human beings. The first is min ayn. Where are we from? What is our origin? How did we come into being? How did this universe come into being? You find that either there is mass confusion, there is a lot of doubt, or there is an attitude of apathy about these important questions. Secondly, wafi ayn. Where did we come from? What is our origin and what is our purpose? How many people actually sit and ponder deeply about the purpose of life? We're very distracted. The end of times, you will find that people will not care about their origin. They will not give importance to these fundamental questions, and they will not ask these deep questions. What is the purpose of life? Wa ila ayn. Where are we going? What is our point of origin? What is our purpose? And what is our ultimate destination? The ahadith that describe the end of time say that Akhir al-Zaman will be characterized as a time of great confusion, a time of doubt. People will have serious doubts about their origin, their purpose, and their ultimate destination. And that is because of the proliferation of many different ideas and philosophies and systems of thinking. You know, if you go online and you research about the different theories about the origin of man, you're going to be overwhelmed. If you try to research and conduct an in-depth study about what are the theories out there about the purpose of human existence, you're going to be bombarded with so many different views, often diverging views. When you want to explore the question of what is the ultimate destination of man, again, so many different theories and philosophies. So you find that in the ahadith, Akhir al-Zaman is a time of great confusion. It's a time where people will become very skeptical. You know, brothers and sisters, we live in a time where people are extremely skeptical and doubtful. You know, brothers and sisters, there's a hadith that is mentioned by Sheikh al-Tusi, one of our prominent ulama, who wrote a book called Al-Ghayba. He's gathered all of the ahadith that speak about the occultation of the Imam and the end of times and the imminent reappearance. He says there's a hadith from one of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt where he says, فَعِنْدَ ذَلِكَ, when the Imam is in Ghayba and the occultation has become prolonged, فَعِنْدَ ذَلِكَ يَرْتَابُ الْمُبْطِلُونَ. This is when the mubtilun will put forth many doubts. What is the meaning of mubtilun? This noun is mentioned in the Quran. It refers to a group of people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in surah number 29 verse 48, He tells us about why He was adamant about the Prophet not writing and reading. You see, there's a debate over whether the Prophet was literate or illiterate, but the general consensus among many ulama is that the Prophet had the knowledge. He knew how to write and read, but he just never practiced it. He was not known in Arabia as someone who read or someone who wrote. Why? Allah explains. He says, وَمَا كُنْتَ تَتْلُو مِنْ قَبْلِهِ مِنْ كِتَابٍ وَلَا تَخُطُّهُ بِيَمِينِكَ إِذًا لَارْتَابَ الْمُبْطِلُونَ. "O Muhammad, if you were someone who was known as someone who was able to read and someone who wrote, those who have a propensity to doubt, to have irrational doubts, they would have put forward those doubts and those arguments. They would say, oh, this Quran, Muhammad learned it when he was reading the Bible or the Torah. This Quran is the product of Muhammad's research because he was always reading, he was always writing, always researching. So you find in the Quran, mubtilun are a type of people who have irrational doubts, who are looking for excuses to reject. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no problem with people who have logical doubts. Islam teaches you that doubt is a good place to start, but it's not a good place to stay in forever. There are many people today, they ask good questions, they raise important questions, but that's all they do. They just ask, they doubt, they have this attitude of skepticism, but it's never followed by sincere investigation. This is the attitude of the people of Akhir al-Zaman. They're skeptical, they raise questions, but a lot of their doubts are irrational. They're looking for excuses to reject faith. You know, there's an interesting story about Ibn Sina. Ibn Sina is one of the most famous Muslim thinkers in Islamic scholasticism. In the West, he's known as Avicenna. You know, subhanallah. When it's a Muslim scholar, they always have to Latinize his name, make him sound like some Italian guy. He's Ibn Sina. And this is a man who was, as many of you know, he was a polymath, a Persian polymath. He had mastery over many different subjects. Historians say that he wrote about 450 works, 150 on the subject of medicine. He wrote on the subject of philosophy, 40 writings in medicine. He was really a genius of his time. He had a student by the name of Bahman. He was a student, one of the closest students of Ibn Sina. His student told him that, "Oh, Ibn Sina, you are such a unique thinker, you're a brilliant thinker, you're a genius with all of this knowledge and this expertise in a wide range of topics, that I think that if you were to claim nubuwwah, people would believe that you're a prophet and they would follow you." Ibn Sina, he doesn't say anything, he ignores the comment. They're traveling together, and it's nighttime. They camp out at a place, at a home. In the middle of the night, Ibn Sina, he wakes up his student. You know, at that time there was no running water. He tells them, "Can you go outside to the well and get me water?" It was a cold night. He woke him up. He woke up Bahmanyan and said, "I'm thirsty, can you wake up and go outside and get me some water?" You know, when someone wakes you up in the middle of the night, you want to try to come up with excuses not to go. He tells Ibn Sina that, "No, it's too cold outside. If you drink water, you might get sick. You know, wait until the time of Fajr and I'll get you water." And he gives them many different excuses. "Oh, the well is far away, you know, there might not be water." Ibn Sina says, okay, he goes back to sleep. A couple of hours later, they hear the adhan. They both wake up. Ibn Sina tells his student that this is the difference between Ibn Sina and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. His student says, "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" He says, "This mu'adhin got out of his bed on a winter night, walked through the alleys, sacrificed his sleep, climbed up all the way on this minaret, and is reciting adhan to follow in the footsteps of a man who he has never met. He never met Rasulullah. But look at how much love he has for the Messenger of Allah that he's willing to make these sacrifices. You are my student. You see me every day. You spend time with me. I asked you to get up for one night, and you didn't get up. And you made all of these excuses. You see, the human being, when you want to make excuses, you can come up with all of these justifications. In Akhir zaman, people will be like this. That's why you see this atheist movement. When you're not sincere in your pursuit of haqq, shaitan is going to supply you with many excuses. That's why Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullahi alayhi, he quotes the Holy Prophet. He says, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa says, Al-Mahdi min wuldi. The Mahdi is from my progeny. He's one of my sons. تكون له غيبة وحيرة تظل فيها الأمم. He will go through a ghayba, an occultation, and there will be so much confusion around the world that nations will go astray. Generations will go astray. Now when you read these ahadith, it's easy to become depressed. Sometimes when you read about Akhir al-Zaman, you lose hope. But in the ahadith about Akhir al-Zaman, there are a lot of glad tidings that have been offered to us. There's a beautiful tradition from the sixth holy Imam, Al-Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, salawatullahi alayhi, where he says that even though Akhir al-Zaman is known as the darkest of times, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Even though Akhir al-Zaman is recognized as the darkest of times, a time of deviation and confusion, Imam Zainul Abidin, Imam As-Sadiq, what does he say? It's also an opportunity to be among the best servants of Allah. He says, أَقْرَبُ مَا يَكُونُ الْعَبْدُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَأَرْضَى مَا يَكُونُ عَنْ إِذَا افْتَقَدُوا حُجَّةَ اللَّهِ. The closest you can be to Allah, if you want to be so close to Allah, and if you want Allah to be pleased with you, you need to yearn for Allah's hujjah. You need to miss and feel this void in you for the Imam of your time. You know, brothers and sisters, you and I need to be like Yaqub. Yaqub in the Holy Quran, when he was separated from Yusuf, what happened to him? Was he smiling and laughing, or did he feel the absence of Yusuf? وَبْيَضَّتْ عَيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْحُزْنِ فَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ. And Yaqub knew where Yusuf was. He knew that Yusuf was okay. Do you and I know where Sahib al-Zaman is? Do we know if the Imam is okay? We don't. We need to mourn and we need to yearn for Sahib al-Zaman, just like Yaqub yearned and longed for Yusuf. We have to miss the Imam. We have to yearn for him. We have to feel his absence. The Imams of Ahlul Bayt, they say during the ghaibah, The real believers are doing what? They are anticipating the reappearance day and night. Day and night. What does that mean? When something, if you have a problem, you know the ghaiba, you have to look at the ghaiba as a problem. This is not an ideal situation for the ummah to not have direct access to Allah's representative on earth. It's not ideal. When you have a big problem, what happens? You're always thinking about it. If you have one car and you need your vehicle to go to work and your car breaks down, what are you going to be talking about all day? What's going to occupy your thoughts all day, every day? Repairing your car. Because it's a problem, you're thinking about it day and night. This is why Ahlul Bayt, they say the mu'min is anticipating the zuhur day and night. Because it's a big problem not to have that direct access to the Imam. That's why in Dua and Nudba, what do we say? Azizun alayya an ara al-khalqa wa la tura. It is very painful for me that I get to see everybody, but I don't get to see you. وَلَا أَسْمَعُ لَكَ حَسِيسًا وَلَا نَجْوَى. Not only do I not see the Imam, I don't even get to hear from him. You find, brothers and sisters, that the Imam continues in the hadith and he says, وَإِنَّ أَشَدَّ مَا يَكُونُ غَضَبًا عَلَىٰ أَعْدَائِهِ إِذَا أَفْقَدَهُمْ حُجَّةً. Ahlul Bayt and their followers, they've had enemies from the days of Rasulullah. Generation after generation, the followers of Ahlul Bayt have been persecuted. But you know, brothers and sisters, Allah is most angry with those who attack the followers of Ahlul Bayt during the ghaibah. More so than any period. Why? I'll give you a simple example. During this time period, because the Imam is not present, or he has not reappeared, technically our spiritual guardian is not with us. If you see an orphan who's being attacked, and the guardian of that orphan is not present, wouldn't that evoke more anger? Because you're attacking a yatim in the absence of his guardian. So the action is even more ugly. Because you're taking advantage of the vulnerability, the extra vulnerability of the orphan. Because the orphan doesn't have the caretaker or the guardian with them. Ahlul Bayt, they say, Allah's wrath is incurred the most during the ghaibah, because when the followers of Ahlul Bayt are being attacked, they are like the yatim that is being attacked when the guardian is not with them. When the guardian is not with them. Now, brothers and sisters, when you look at these ahadith, you find that there are certain believers in Akhir al-Zaman whose faith is so strong, whose yaqeen is so strong, that the hadith says, وَقَدْ عَلِمَ, Imam al-Sadiq says, وَقَدْ عَلِمَ أَنَّ أَوْلِيَاءَهُ لَا يَرْتَابُونَ لو علم أنهم يرتابون لما أفقدهم حجة طرفة عين. The hadith says Allah knew that there will be believers during the ghaibah who will never lose faith in their Imam. If Allah knew that all people would be shaken by the ghaibah, there would have never been a ghaibah. There would have never been a ghaibah. In fact, there are people during the ghaibah, during the end of times, whose intellect is so sharp and their ability to comprehend is so profound that Imam Zainul Abidin, salawatullahi alayhi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, the Imam, he says, Inna Allah alima أنه يكون في آخر الزمان أقوام متعمقون. Imam al-Sajjad, he says, Allah in His knowledge, He knew that at the end of times there will be people who have sharp intellect, who are so deep in their understanding. فَأَنزَلَ اللَّهُ قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Imam al-Sajjad, he says, the reason why Allah revealed Surah Al-Ikhlas is because Allah knew that at the end of times there will be people who understand the power of Surah Qul Huwa Allahu Ahad. Surah Qul Huwa Allahu Ahad was not revealed for those who were in the past. This surah, even though it's only a few ayat, the message of this surah is so deep. Imam Zainul Abidin, he says, this will be understood by the mu'mineen of Akhir al-Zaman. For many people, La ilaha illallah is something that we teach the little kids in madrasa. It's the basic elementary stuff. Imam Zainul Abidin, he says, the secret of La ilaha illallah will be understood by mu'mineen of Akhir al-Zaman, because their intellect is so refined. And the Imam says, Al-Muntadhirun li-dhuhuri, those who are actively waiting for the reappearance of the Imam, أفضل أهل كل زمان. The people who are waiting, actively waiting for the reappearance, they are better than the mu'mineen of all of the previous generations. During the ghaibah, brothers and sisters, you have an opportunity to be superior to Abu Dhar, to be superior to these companions who were steadfast with the Imams of Allah, because they had the privilege of seeing the Ma'soom day in and day out. Your Iman is unique. It's superior to theirs if you are pious. And inshallah in the subsequent nights we'll speak more about the believers of the end of times. What makes these believers unique? It's not the abundance of their prayers or fasting, no. What makes them unique? The Imam says, Imam al-Sajjad, he says, لِأَنَّ اللَّهَ أَعْطَاهُمْ مِنَ الْعُقُولِ وَالْأَفْهَامِ وَالْمَعْرِفَةِ, because Allah has given them sharp intellect. He has given them understanding. So much so, فَصَارَتِ الْغَيْبَةُ عِنْدَهُمْ بِمَنْزِلَةِ الشُّهُودِ. Their understanding is so deep that for them it doesn't make a difference. Their Iman is solid, whether the Imam remains in ghaibah or the Imam reappears. It's not that dhuhur will increase their Iman. For them, they are spiritually mature. They don't need to see the Imam with their eyes. In the same way, they don't need to see Allah to go down into sujood to Him. A sign of spiritual immaturity is that you have to always see something with your eyes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Baqarah verse 55, He criticizes Bani Israel. If you read the Quran, you really feel sorry for Musa, how much grief they caused him. And notice, Bani Israel, they never say, Ya Rasulullah or Ya Nabi Allah. They say, Ya Musa, like he's the janitor or he's their next door neighbor. They don't even address him with respect. They say what? Ya Musa, lan nu'min lak hatta nara Allah jaharatan. This is after He showed them the miracle, the Red Sea was split. They say, we will never believe in you until we see Allah with our physical eyes. Spiritually immature. Fir'aun was the same. When he saw the signs, what did he say? You mocked Musa. He looks to Haman, one of his helpers, his builders. He said, فَأُوْقِدْ لِي يَا هَامَانَ عَلَى الطِّينِ فَاجْعَلْ لِي صَرْحًا لَعَلِّي أَطَّلِعُ إِلَى إِلَهِ Musa. Fir'aun had a builder, an architect, a builder by the name of Haman. He says, Haman, Musa is speaking about Rabbil Alameen, build a tower for me so I can go up on this tower and at least get a glance of Musa's Lord. Spiritual immaturity. You have to see it to believe it. Whereas the mu'mineen, they understand there are many things that are beyond the perceptible world. The Imam continues, Imam Zayn al-Abidin, he says, the mu'mineen of Akhir al-Zaman, they are like al-mujahideen bayna yaday Rasulillah bis-sayf. The believers at the end of time who are able to hold on to their faith, they're righteous, they're pious, they are like the ones who fought alongside Rasulullah in the battlefield. أولئك المخلصون حقا. Imam al-Sajjad, he says, these are the real sincere ones. These are the real Shi'as. These are الدعاة إلى دين الله سرا وجهرا. These are the ones who invite people to Allah when they speak and even when they are silent. Can you imagine that you become so pure that even your silence is da'wah? Many of you maybe have been to Karbala and Najaf, and I hear this from a lot of youth. Sometimes when you sit with certain ulama, you go to Qom, Najaf, other places, sometimes when you sit with spiritual people, just being in their presence has an effect on you. Many of you may have seen ulama, you've been around certain mu'mineen where they don't even need to talk. When you look at them, when you're around them, they motivate you to elevate yourself. These are the mu'mineen of Akhir al-Zaman. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. When the Imam reappears, what does he do? So we said that during the end of the ghaibah there's mass confusion. Only the believers, the steadfast believers who have refined intellects and minds, they will be on the front lines. They will be saved during this period. When the Imam reappears, what is he going to do to the intellectual condition? How is he going to deal with the intellect of human beings? The hadith is from Imam al-Baqir salawatullahi alayhi. He says, إِذَا قَامَ قَائِمُنَا, when the 12th Imam rises, وَضَعَ اللَّهُ يَدَهُ عَلَى رُؤُوسِ الْعِبَادِ. Allah will put His hand, or it could be understood the Imam's hand, on the heads of all people. This could be metaphorical to indicate that under the Imam's leadership this will happen. فَجَمَعَ بِهَا عُقُولَهُمْ وَكَمُلَتْ بِهِ أَحْلَامُهُمْ. Under the leadership of the 12th Imam, people's intellects will be gathered and their dreams will be achieved. The ulama, they have understood this hadith in one of two ways. They say, number one, the hadith says, He will gather not the intellects and the minds of Muslims, all of the ibad, which means the Imam is going to elevate the intellectual standard for all people, not just Muslim Shias. The Imam is the Imam of all people. What does it mean when the hadith says فَجَمَعَ بِهَا عُقُولَهُمْ, that He will gather their intellects? One opinion is, if you look at the world today, are human beings bringing their minds together to move forward, or what are we doing? The brightest and the most brilliant people, where are they going? They're going to work for what? Department of Defense, Pentagon. They're working for companies that are doing what? That are building and creating more efficient ways to kill people. the people that graduate from Ivy League schools, they're recruited by companies to do what? To find more innovative ways to destroy humanity. Many of you may be familiar with the neutron bomb. You know what the neutron bomb is? This is a type of bomb that was designed by some of the most brilliant scientists and engineers. Do you know what the goal of this type of bomb is? It is to completely kill all human beings, but to keep the oil infrastructure intact. Because there's so much chaos in the Middle East, you know. We need to come up with a way to obliterate everyone, but not to damage the oil refineries and the oil infrastructure. This is what insan is doing with his intellect. Instead of fighting each other, the Imam will reconcile people. So we use all of this mental energy and our intellectual talents not to destroy the planet and to destroy mankind, but to do what? To advance mankind. This is one possible meaning of فَجَمَعَ بِهَا عُقُولُهُم. The second possible explanation is what? That no, the Imam is speaking about individual intellects. People today are so distracted, like people on their phones, right? We can't sit through a majlis without pulling out our phones. Which we lay in bed at night, we can't fall asleep because we need something to occupy ourselves. We don't know how to even think anymore. You know, sometimes when the Quran says reflect, believe me, some of us don't even know what reflection means. Because we have to push a button, we have to send a Snapchat, we have to go on Instagram, we have to occupy, our minds are very fragmented. The Imam is going to teach us how to become people who are focused. Because when you're focused, there is a lot that you can achieve. And this is why when you look at the seerah of the Holy Prophet, you find Rasulullah and the Ahlul Bayt, they were masters of time management. The only way you can be focused and you can be goal-oriented is if you organize your time. I'll give you a few time management principles from the seerah of the Prophet that we can apply in our daily lives. Number one, you know, some of them are not very profound, but if you practice them, they'll really improve your lives. Number one, go to bed early. If Salatul Fajr is at 3:30 a.m. and you're watching Netflix at 1 a.m., Shaitan won that night, right? You're probably not going to wake up. You might wake up in Ramadan because suhoor, you have to eat, right? But if it's in another month, you're not going to wake up. Allah in the Quran, He says, وَجَعَلْنَا اللَّيْلَ لِبَاسًا, I have made the night a covering for you, a time of rest. You're going against your own nature. You're going against the natural orientation of the human being. Go to bed early, because Allah doesn't only describe mu'mineen as those who wake up for Fajr. Allah, when He speaks about mu'mineen, what does He say? وَالْمُسْتَغْفِرِينَ بِالْأَسْحَارِ. The mu'min is the one who does istighfar at the time of sahar. The time of sahar is the end of the night before Fajr. To wake up before Fajr or at the time of Fajr, you have to sleep early. If you look at all of our ulama, they used to go to bed early and they would wake up before Fajr. You have to build this discipline. Number two, brothers and sisters, organize your schedule around the time of Salah. You know, sometimes when we look at our calendars, we set this meeting, that meeting, we have these errands to run, and then we try to fit Salah into our schedule when we have time. Ahlul Bayt, they teach us, build your schedule around the time of Salah. Shift everything else around, because your schedule is a reflection of your priorities in life. If Allah is really a priority in your life, His meeting comes first, and all other meetings can be moved around and shifted. When Rasulullah used to sit with his companions, they were having conversations, when the moment of prayer, when the time of salah would approach, the hadith says he would stand up and leave to prepare for salah as if he doesn't know them and they don't know him. We have to organize our schedules around the time of salah. You also find in the seerah of the Holy Prophet, whenever you have an opportunity to do good, don't procrastinate. If you can get something done today, don't say tomorrow. Don't procrastinate. Because there are many people who said, oh, inshallah, I'm going to pay sadaqah tomorrow. I'm going to do salatul layl, inshallah, next month I'll start. But Malakul Maut came before they had that opportunity. You have to race towards act of goodness. You know, there's a story about a man who used to like grapes. This was a few hundred years ago. He was in Iran, and he was coming home from a long day of work, and he passed by the marketplace and he purchased some grapes. He arrived home and he gave it to his wife, and he says, here are some grapes. I'm going to eat them later. I'm going to take a nap. He goes and he takes a nap for a couple of hours. He wakes up. He asks his wife, where are the grapes? Bring the grapes. I want to eat them. She says, they're gone. Why are they gone? Oh, we ate them. The kids wanted, they ate them. When he saw this, he immediately stood up and he left. He thought to himself that my family forgot about me while I am still alive. I'm providing for them and they forgot me. What is going to happen when I die and they bury me? Who's going to remember me? I made a simple request. I am alive and they forgot about me. So he decided that it was urgent for him to make an immediate investment in his akhirah. If your own children, and believe me, brothers and sisters, when you die, your children, your loved ones, they might recite Surah Al-Fatiha for you, multiple times a day, especially if it's been recent. But when the months go by and the years go by, don't depend on people's Surah Al-Fatiha. You're going to be forgotten. I know people that barely visit the graves of their parents. If you have a lot of hope that people are going to recite Surah Al-Fatiha and do good deeds on your behalf, believe me, you're in for a major disappointment. So he goes and he purchases a piece of land and he hires a builder and he decides that he wants to build an Islamic school. He says, all this money I'm spending on my children, you have to provide for your children. And until today, that Islamic school is graduating ulama. Because he realized that if I want to be comfortable in the akhirah, I have to invest for myself. Don't depend on other people. And finally, brothers and sisters, you and I, people always complain that, I don't have enough time to read or to gain knowledge. All of us, we commute to work, right? 20 minutes, 30 minutes to work, back and forth. About an hour, hour and a half a day, we're in the car. Take advantage of that time. Listen to Quran. Listen to a lecture. Because, brothers and sisters, there are many people who have memorized the Quran, memorized many ahadith. They have gained so much knowledge because they've taken advantage of these pockets of free time throughout their day. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to bless us and guide us and illuminate our hearts with the teachings of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Allahumma aghfir lil mu'minina wal mu'minat, al muslimina wal muslimat, al ahya'i minhum wal amwat. تابع اللهم بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات إنك مجيب الدعوات إنك قاضي الحاجات، إنك على كل شيء قدير. وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات، رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة مسبوقة بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.